good afternoon. It's a pleasure to welcome you all in our session entitled Advance in Antiquarian Book Collecting. Collectors aim to raise a greater public awareness of the value of books as cultural artifacts and of book collecting as a specialized art in itself. So our speakers for this session is Dr. Jose Dalisay, or Sir Butch. Sir Butch Dalisay is readers of his Pen Man column in the Philippine Star. He was born in Romblon, Philippines in 1954. He has been one of the most recognized Filipino writers in the recent years, winning awards for his work in both English and Filipino. He has published over 35 books of his stories, plays, and essays, with 6 of those books receiving the National Book Award from the Manila Critics Circle. More than 20 of his screenplays have also been produced. In 1998, he was named to the Cultural Center of the Philippines Centennial Honors List as one of the 100 most accomplished Filipino artists of the past century. So that is Dr. Jose Dalisay. So for our next speaker, Sir Anthony John R. Balisi, or also named as Sir Tuni. So Sir Tuni is a self-professed book geek. He writes, reads, and collects books. An anthropologist by training, currently into collecting Philippine anthropology books published during the American colonial regime. At the end of the 19th century, the colonial rhetoric of manifest destiny had pushed American settlers across the Pacific. There was so much interest in categorizing the Philippine primitives back then. It is facilitating how all these interactions were captured in print form from the American gaze and how these are being reread in our current times. Sir Balisi served as Director 1 at the National Book Development Board and likewise sit as one of the members of the Board of Directors of the Ugnayan Pang-Agham Tao, Inc., or UGAT, the Anthropological Association of the Philippines. Again, Sir Anthony John Balisi. For our next speaker, Sir Francis Ong. Sir Ong was a Green Archer in the Blue Eagle's Nest. He currently works as the brand manager for Thunderbird under the Unilab Group, one of the founders of the Mauban Heritage Advocates, which represent his hometown in Quezon Heritage Provincial Council. His humble collection of Philippine antiques largely focuses on the Laguna and Tayabas region. Again, Sir Francis Ong. So, I'll now call Sir Tuni to moderate the session.
Magandang hapon po sa lahat. This is going to be a very informal, conversational talk. So, we have 2 collectors, three of us, and we have among the crowd several members of the Filipiniana Book Collectors Club, which is an online Facebook group dedicated to collecting Filipiniana materials. So, we're here to discuss why we collect, what we collect, and how do we get the books, where do we get the books, and how do we maintain the books. So I think we'll start with Sir Butch Dalisay on his marvelous collection.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. I think what we agreed to do is that each of us will talk for about 10 minutes, just introducing our collecting and do a bit of show and tell, and then we'll go into Q&A and then an open forum. Okay? So, well, as you see here, I brought a stack of books with me, and I have to apologize today for being such a show-off, but I rarely get this opportunity really to talk about my favorite things. Many of you know me as a collector of all kinds of junk, of vintage fountain pens, watches, typewriters, old paintings, but today I'm going to focus on the books, which has really more recently been a passion for me. As it should be, because of course I write books. I've written quite a few of them. And the first point I'd like to make here is that I think all of us book collectors begin as readers. First, we read books. We like just the company of books. We read for education, for entertainment. But when you transition into becoming a collector, it's now about something else. It goes beyond just the pleasure of reading, which is pleasurable enough. As I was telling a historian friend who couldn't understand why I had to find get the original copy of a book that you could easily get online for free. No? Kung gusto mo lang basahin, libre naman lahat yan online halos eh. So bakit kailangan pang hanapin at bilhin yung mahal na libro? I told him, I was telling him, Greg, the object is the object. I began collecting books basically for show and tell in class when I teach literature. I wanted my students to understand the materiality of literature. Na noong araw, ang mga ito, talagang pang-araw-araw nababasahin ng mga tao yan. As real as the internet is for us today. So when I teach American literature, for example, American colonial literature, I tell my students, what were they reading? Like in 1773, just before the American Revolution. And then I bring out, hindi ko dala ngayon, but I bring out a copy of the Gentleman's Magazine from November 1773. I just don't bring it out. I pass it around the class. It's probably the oldest thing they ever held in their hands. But it just surprises them to be in direct contact with history in their hands. Kaya para sa akin yung magic na yan, the kind of high you get from opening a really old book. I think there's a term that somebody coined for it, Biblicor ba yun? That unique smell that you get out of musty old books. And you get that from some of these. I'm just going to go through a very, very quick show and tell here, then you can ask me questions later. Just to go to the heart of things. I collect all kinds of books. Of course, mainly, given my background, history, and I would have been a historian if I chose between history and literature. And I just chose literature because I could graduate faster. But I love reading. This is my oldest book. And I'll tell you a very quick story about it. This is a book of English essays from 1551. So this is 470 years old. Where did I find it? OLX.ph. I saw an ad saying, old book, 20,000. I said, what? Anong klaseng old book naman binibenta dito sa OLX, 20,000? So, tinawagan ko yung seller. Sabi niya, sir, lumang libro talaga to. Sabi ko, asan ka ba? Dito lang ako sa Cubao. Sabi ko, puntahan kita ngayon din. Pinuntahan ko, it was Christmas Eve. Within 30 minutes, I was there. Doon kami sa ilaw ng, doon sa kalye. Sabi ko talagang marunong ako magbasa ng Gothic black letter. So talagang 1551 nga. And so sabi ko, wala akong 20,000. Sabi ko, etong laman ng bulsa ko, 7,000. Pwede na ba to? Sabi niya, okay na yan. Isang taon ko na binibenta, walang papansin eh. So the big question is, how does a book of English essays from 1551 end up in Cubao? Well, sabi niya, ang nanay ko, caregiver sa Paris eh. Ito yung binibigay sa kanya nung kanyang pinagtatrabahuan. Wala naman siya pakinabang doon, so pinadala sa akin. So, tsamba lang. The point is, sometimes it's just pure serendipity that you run into these things. Okay, just a quick run through. This doesn't look too good, but it's the first edition of Bulosan's Americas in the Heart. This is actually my second copy of a first edition. The first one having been signed by Bulosan himself, inscribed to his friend, Fred Ruiz Castro. How did I find that? So, I wrote in my column that I wanted a first edition of Bulosan. Somebody wrote me to say, I have one. So sabi ko, magkano? Sabi niya, 20,000. Bakit nga ba 20,000 ang iniisip naman? Sabi niya, 20,000. Sabi ko, wala akong 20,000 eh. I was still, a teacher then. And then about a month later, he calls me again, sir, 5,000 na lang. Sabi ko, o sige, kita tayo sa Jollibee. And then I saw it, it's Bulosan, Talagang haba ng inscription niya kay Fred Ruiz Castro. So anyway, I got that. The next month, my daughter was getting married in the States. Yun ang aming wedding present sa kanya. America's in the heart. And then I wrote about that, and then I wrote about it in my column. Sabi ko, pinamigay ko yung aking first edition. Pag-uwi ko na Maynila, this was waiting for me on my table. Another first edition, signed by Gregorio Brillantes, 1947. This was his copy when he was in high school. Sabi niya, I heard that you gave away your Bulosan, so I'm giving you mine. So sometimes you get books from the generosity of friends. Like also this book is the only one of its kind. This is Yabes's compilation of our earliest works in English. This was from the 1930s. This was given to me by Yabes to Jimmy Abad, who gave it to me for restoration. I had it fully restored, and we will be donating this book at some point to the UP library, as I will most of these books. This is a facsimile, the Doctrina Christiana, our first book in English, in print, of course, 1593. There's only one copy of it, the original in the whole world. That's in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. My wife and I had the privilege of actually seeing and holding that copy a few years ago. It's the only, sabi sa akin ng librarians at LOC, of all their millions of books, the Doctrina is the only book whose every page is encased in mylar. Now, why is this facsimile important? Because it was published in 1947. As soon as the Library of Congress got the book, they understood how important it was. They had a facsimile made. The special thing about it is that this is signed by Lessing Rosenwald, who donated the book to it was his collection that gave it to the LOC. Just very quickly, some more junk. I collect magazines and journals in which our authors first appeared in the U.S. I have several of them. So the first publications of Gilia, of Bienvenido Santos. This is an early version of The Woman who had two navels, Nick Bokin, Partisan Review, 1953. When I find these online, I buy them up. Actually, nung grad student pa lang ako sa Amerika, ginagawa ko na yan. In other words, rescuing Philippine material in the States and bringing them back here, retrieving them. An early edition of the Philippine Collegian. I was on the Collegian staff, well, not back then, but this must be the earliest Collegian that I know. I have seen 1922, as I was telling Rasil and the others here. 1922, they were talking about the same things: academic freedom, lack of funding, militarization, social justice, and so on. Walang nagbago in 100 years. First edition of Without Seeing the Dawn. Nice thing is that this is signed by Zoilo Galang, whom some of you will know, was our first novelist in English. Firmado ni Zoilo yan, and I had the gumption to also sign my name. Sabi ko, pag nagpipirma ako ng mga libro, sabi ko, bumababa, tumataas yung value nito. Sabi ko, bahala, akin naman yan. So, pipirmahan ko talaga siya. One of my personal favorites, because I just love the story. This is the first English edition of 20 Years in the Philippines. Also know later, this is Jean-Paul de la Gironnière. This is 1854, London. I found this on eBay. I think I have another copy of this. This is my most recent acquisition. El Filibusterismo, second edition, published in 1900 in Manila, Escolta, by Chofre. I got this just a couple of weeks ago, found online. Dun sa Filipiniana Book Collectors Club natin, no? But I was lucky to get it. You'll see here, we can talk about this later. You can see the poor condition of the book. The spine is broken. We can talk a bit about, ewan ko nandito si Loreto, sabi niya pupunta raw siya rito. But we can talk about book restoration and where and how it's done. One of my best finds, the Atlas de Filipinas. If you're a collector of Filipiniana, you'll be familiar with this. This is 1900. It has two cover pages, one in Spanish, one in one in English. Exactly, the Jesuits finished this before the Americans came. And this has beautiful, beautiful maps of the Philippines. And whenever I think I have 3 copies of this. And this is one of the better ones. This is also easily, well, not that easily, but you can find it online. Sometimes you get books, good books, purely by chance. This is now hard to find. Discovering Philippine Art in Spain. No, this is not a very old book. One thing about books is that age is not automatically equivalent, is not automatically equivalent to value, the price. This is only 20 years old, published by the Philippine Centennial Commission, I think, by the DFA. But it's very, very hard to find now. And this contains collections of Philippine art in Spain. But this came as a bonus because I was buying a painting and my seller told me, "Sir, baka interesado kayo, may librong kasama yan." Sabi ko, magkano yan? Sabi niya, 1.5. Sabi ko, sige, pwede na yan. Akin na. What? 68,000. Ako, tatago ko yan. Now, he's the last one I'll show you for today. I brought this book because I wanted you to see what elephant folio is like. And again, this is familiar to book collectors. This is the Harper's History.
First edition yours?
Yes. Yes. I have here 3 of these. Illustrated. There are many, many books about the Philippine American War. I think 6 of them, because most of them is Breis, that was blue, I had this. Of course, it's all told from the American point of view. But pictorially, this is really one of the best ones you can find. And I have this professionally restored. How can you say no to a book like this? So I have this very carefully restored by my restorer, Balisi, the Bulwagan Recoletos. And I can talk more about book restoration in a while. But I think you've now seen the range of things I'm interested in. I have a special small collection of books by of course, my fellow authors, especially national artists. I have some books signed by Pulitzer Prize winners, Nobel Prize winners, whom I had the chance to meet and get the signed books. I'm happy to have a book signed by Brazil somewhere, I'm sure. But so I never pass the opportunity to get more books. And the point is, I will not even pretend that I have read or can read most or many of the books that I own. It's impossible. First of all, many of my old books are in French, in Spanish, although I can kind of figure out what's going on with the dictionary. It's not the reading anymore that matters to me, but just finding and preserving them as a custodian for future generations. Because somebody has to hold on to these things, and you never really own them. Again, you just pass them on. Put them together, repair them, and pass them on, and that, I think, is the whole pleasure of our passion. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, Sir Butch. Manghang-mangha po yung audience. Ang dami ko narinig na, So ngayon po, let's go to another book collector, Francis Ong, to share his collection.
Hi, good afternoon. So yun, I think I'm the newest book collector in this group, very, kumbaga, distinguished individuals. My story naman with book collecting started with, it's actually more on, I started with collecting antiques. Yun yung hilig ko kasi I grew up, not really grew up, but I'm from an old town, that's Mauban in Quezon. So it's a very old, far-flung town. So I grew up around the traditions of my lola, of the people. We grew up in an old ancestral house. So parang growing older, parang naisip ko na I want to collect again. Kasi nga, in the 80s, a lot of the pieces in the house were sold off by some relatives, ganyan, or something. So ngayon naman, ang trabaho ko is to bring pieces back in. So, ang importance naman ng books for me is that kumbaga, in terms of collecting, I'm rather late. It's a late time to start. The heyday talaga of antiques was in the 60s, the 70s. At this point, a lot of the antiques that I see are newly reproduced. So, we call it in the antiques lingo as reproduction. So, antiques that were reproduced in the 1970s would already have patina by now. So that's already about 40 years or 50 years. So it would have, it would look to be antique, but it's not really antique. So the importance of books for me is that I get to use it as a checking system for what I buy. Kasi of course, antiques aren't really, they're not the cheapest of things to buy. But of course, there are still good buys out there. So ayun, so that's basically how it started for me. Considering the fact then that I'm actually from a flood-prone area of Metro Manila. So I'm from Provident Village, Marikina. So collecting books for me isn't really, kumbaga, something that I would like to, kumbaga, avoid. But I can't stop it and I can't help it. Last year, I remember there was a big flood again in our area na I was stuck for an event. I had an event dito sa may MOA and all of my things, my collections, my paintings, my books, all of them were in the house. Tapos, Ondoy, back in 2009, happened because the water breached our, meron kasi kaming parang breakwater doon around there. There's a wall around Provident. So habang hindi lumalampas yung water from the wall, safe kami. But if the water breaches that wall, in 15 minutes, flash flood, lubog ang buong first floor namin. Kasi malapit kami doon. So imagine the kaba na parang nung ang update sa akin, 3 inches na lang, lalampas na yung tubig dun sa dun sa wall. So na-realize ko, nandun ako, parang I was thinking, what's really important? Yung parang kasi hindi ako makauwi. So, all I had in my house were my parents. So, ayoko din naman silang ma-stress na sabihin ko sa kanila, oh ma, pakiakyat yung ganito, pakiakyat yung ganito, pakiakyat yung ganyan. So, parang, lang talaga siya, parang, ganun pala, no? Parang, sige na, let go na lang. Okay, save yourselves. Pero, which is good naman, kahit tuloy-tuloy yung ulan that night, parang 30 minutes, tuloy-tuloy ang ulan, but the waters were going down. So the highest it reached was that 3 inches na lang, lalampas na siya. But thank God, parang kahit umuulan, dahan-dahang bumababa yung tubig. Ako, hi, salamat, meron pa. Kaya nandito to ngayon. Otherwise, all I'd have here with me would be mush. So, ayan. So some of the books that I have here with me are not as old, but then they're also, kumbaga, right now in the market, they're also hard to find, and they're also a bit expensive. For example, like, Anzagat Bunton's Heritage of Saints, this book. The hardbound one could be bought online for about 25,000 pesos already. So, this was a lucky find because it was just given to me by an uncle. Kaya, ay, salamat may tito kong mabait. So, bigay lang yun sa akin. So, inside, you have reference material. Example for for this thing here in front of me. This is supposedly an early 18th or a 17th century angel. So things like this, you can see them from samples that were done before. So you can check them out from there. One also hard to find book that I was lucky enough to find was this one, Spanish Churches in the Philippines by Alicia Coseteng. It's also very hard to find, and it was a lucky buy as a private library in Makati was deaccessioning. So I became friends with the owner, and so I was able to buy. A lot of what I get are already from the internet kasi kumbaga that's the in thing ngayon sa amin. Unlike before, 'di ba, we used to go to the antique shops in Cubao Expo or in Recto or somewhere. So ngayon most of it is in online, like yung kinikwento nga kanina, we have the group online. It's called the Philippine Book Collectors Club. There, minsan may mga good buys that you can see there. For example, like this one is from there. Ngayon kasi yung trend din po sa market, when it comes diba to antiques, it's Ramon Villegas, who was really one of the people who wrote about it. So ever since he died a few years ago, a lot of what he wrote kept on rising in prices kasi nga they're also hard to find rin and hard to get. So this is Hias. This is about Philippine jewelry. I was able to get this cheap lang, but right now I think it retails for about 10 to 15 na rin siya. So I got this book because early last year I was in Palawan for a job, and then I had the chance to buy some pre-colonial gold. So syempre, before jumping into something that is, this is the sample of the pre-colonial gold. For example, these are the earrings that they used to wear, and these are a very good of studs. So these are studs, and also another pair of earrings, the star-shaped earrings. So parang before, of course, you jump into something that's a bit you're unsure of, you need to arm yourself with at least the knowledge. So yun, I started collecting books about pre-colonial gold, and this is again one of those that were hard to find. And also, when it comes din nga to ecclesiastical, of course, you need to have Ricky Jose. So, Regalado Trota Jose, this is a first edition of his Simbahan book. This came in important to me because last year, I was being sold something. I was being sold Santo. So, while I was checking actually the book for something else, I was looking for this type of angel. While looking at the book, napara-zoom in ako dun sa isang photo na medyo maliit. Sabi ko, shucks, ano yun? Tapos napakuha ko ng lente. So apparently, yung santo na binibenta sa akin came from a church. It was missing. So it was, I don't know how it was sold. Maybe it was stolen or sold off by the priest. But the thing was, I didn't want to have baggage on me. So without the book, I would have made the purchase. I would have lost a few X amount. And I would have ended up donating it back to the church since that would be the right thing to do. So, yun naman ang madali. And for example, like one of a chair that was recently auctioned is also in this book. And Rueda, the one with the church bells that you ring, it's also in this book. So, it's good reference kasi nga the photos they come from before. It's not like you can get the photos online. Iba pa rin po talaga if you get the books. Kasi a lot of the materials that are published in books, you can't find them online. And in the subject again of Santos, kasi that's talaga, I collect po Santos and furniture. Santos, furniture, and mga small, anything that has to do with an ancestral house, carnival glass, etc., etc. So this one is also, again, hard to find now. Philippine religious imagery by Fernando Zobel. Kasi Zobel was actually, I think he was the first to really focus on studying Santos. He did that in the 1950s. That's why two of my, I think, these were providential finds. Kasi I got these at the Leon auction. A lot of people might think na when it's auction, mahal ang presyo. Not quite. Kasi there are still some lucky buys and lucky finds in the auctions. Not everybody currently present in the auction is interested in something. So for example, like these two, these are first edition books by this was the precursor of this book. So this is a Philippine colonial sculpture, and it is actually signed and dedicated by Fernando Zobel. So you have here written, "For Roger, with thanks for many things, for your Ilocos trip and the photographs that resulted, for the keenness of your eye and the Honesty of your criticism, for your enthusiasm, blah, 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 Fernando, 1958. So, ngayon ko na-realize na yung autograph pala ni Fernando Zobel, dun sa mga paintings niya, actually came from, that's how he signed this letter F. Tapos, iba, he did a round and a line. So, it's actually F and Fernando. So, I think this one here showed that. This is also another one of, another signed of Fernando Zobel. So it's Silver Ex Votos in Ilocos. So with the author's compliments, Zobel. So a lot. To close my my introduction, a lot of collecting sometimes it just happens. For example, like I have a need to get more knowledge. So suddenly the books came in, and suddenly more books are coming in. Kasi nga, a lot of what you buy right now are from the internet. So these are from runners. The runners get their books from family libraries that are selling, ganyan. So if they know that you like a particular subject, you'd be surprised. You'd get PMs every now and then. Boss, binibenta po ito. Boss, binibenta po ito. So with that, you can actually build your own collection. And yun nga, like si Tuni here is focused on some anthropology. Si Sir Butchie is focused talaga on antiquarian. Parang ako naman, it's more on focus towards my collecting of Filipiniana. So yan, thank you and welcome again to this talk.
Thank you, Francis. So nakita natin, we had antiquarian books from Sir Butch and literature. Then we moved to Santos. Now it's my turn to share my collection. This is anthropology books since my background is that I studied anthropology at UP Diliman. So what got me interested in these books are when I read Benito Vergara Jr.'s Displaying Filipinos. So I got interested in colonial period anthropology in the Philippines, and I have access to these books as PDF since these are open source documents. But still, I wanted the real thing. So I wanted the actual books. So oldest in my collection is, of course, you have to have a Dean Worcester book. So this is the Philippine Islands by Dean Worcester, published in 1898. And this is a general book on the Philippine population, and another general book on the Philippine population by Alfred Kroeber. This is the second edition, published in 1928. And we have area-specific books. One is on the Ilongot, headhunters of the Philippines. They used to be called the Philippine headhunters. Well, they're still called Philippine headhunters. But from a colonial gaze, the title says Taming the Philippine Headhunters. So there's a gaze of that these are viewed as primitive, and you have to subjugate them, you have to have control of these populations. And of course, we all know that in early 1900s, we have the St. Louis Exposition at Louisiana. So they brought communities from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao to be displayed at the St. Louis exhibition of 1904. Yeah. And what else do I have here? I also have a book by Barrett Bin on the racial anatomy of the Philippine Islanders, published in 1904. So it talks about the physiology, the anatomy of Philippine population. So, sinusukat ang tangkad, ang tangos ng ilong, ang sukat ng tenga of the Philippine Islanders, of the Filipinos. And, that's physical anthropology, but it's physical anthropology used in a colonial gaze, so para sabihin na this race is inferior to the American race. Okay? And another one is by Roy Barton. It's The Kalingas. So we have a lot of Roy Barton books in anthropology. Interestingly, also, there are women writers during that period. So we have the wife of Alfred Jenks. This is Maud Jenks, writing from a perspective of being the anthropologist's wife. So this is the content of her diary, written throughout the 1920s to 1930s, but published in the 1950s. So it's women's writing on on the ethnic populations of the Philippines. I also have a book entitled Savage Gentleman by Mabel Cook Call, the wife of Faye Cooper Call, famous for the Tingyan book. So she also made a book. These are quite not rare but scarce since the women's writing were not as in terms of printing, they're not as much printed as those as by their male counterparts during that time. Uh, yeah, and Sir Butch mentioned a while ago about the Elephant Folio book. This is more recent. This is published in the 1980s by Harold Conklin. It's the Ethnographic Atlas of Ifugao. Other than anthropology books, I like Sir Butch and Francis. I also collect a lot of books, so comic books included, literature included. So I have here by Miller, Philippine Folklore Stories, published in 1910. And I have here one by National Artist for Literature, Amado V. Hernandez. It's the first edition of Luha ng Buhaya. So it looks like an unused copy. Yeah, it's never been used. Medyo malinis pa lahat. Most of my books are sourced from the US and UK. I had them shipped to my brother's house at California, and it gets consolidated there as in a balikbayan box, then it gets shipped to Quezon City. So that takes about, shipping from California to Quezon City takes about 2 months. Per month, September to January to February, that would take about 3.5 months. So that's it. So may mga comic book collections pa ako, pero I'd like to, for this session, I'd like to focus on the Philippine anthropology books. Ayun, maraming salamat. So the floor is now open to questions. Maybe some of the members of the Philippine Book Collectors Club might want to share their experiences. I see Richard Ragoton here. And we also have Tony Manipon. Is Gilbert Tayamen also here? Gilbert, okay. And we also have Ben Capulong. So maybe some of the members might want to share their collection and what they do to collect, why they collect, and share with the group basically experiences in book collecting. It's about 3,500 members. Richard, Sir Rasil.
Just two questions, perhaps comments. It's working? I mean, to what extent do you feel that kind of the internet has killed the joy of book hunting? Kind of, because I have kind of, for instance, I don't, because I kind of not really into the internet, right? Kind of, so as I told a friend once, as a matter of principle, I won't order a book through the internet. Kind of, because kind of it kind of pains me to think that somebody who's just sitting in his room can get to a book ahead of me. so, so, so that's the kind of the first question. The second one is, I'm struck by the kind of experience of Francis about the cost. I mean, how high the prices are for books like this. Which kind of you expect are not really rare books, no? So I remember like Jack Netzer. Jack Netzer owned the old Cellar Bookshop, the biggest distributor of Philippine books in the U.S. And he was in our library once at San Carlos. So our library, all those kind of glass cabinets, and with the label Rare Filipiniana. And he commented, there's no such thing as rare Filipiniana. All Filipiniana is rare. I mean, if you have a public, that's why I think it's a commentary as well on the state of publishing in the Philippines. The print runs are so small that even if a book sells very slowly, in a year or 2 years' time, it's already out of print. So so he said that, and I think he's right, that and that's why, like he said, the thing is, if you find a Philippine book, you buy it right away, because probably next year you won't find copies anymore. So, I think it's a comment as well on kind of the state of publishing. But books that you would not think should be priced that high, kind of like for instance, all the books that Francis mentioned, I probably got all of them. It never really occurred to me that they would sell for such high prices today.
Can I just give a quick response to your questions, Risil? As far as online goes, I'm your complete opposite. I live and thrive online because I have been on eBay almost from the beginning, since 1997. I have a feedback of almost 1,000 there. Because I'm on eBay like 5 times a day, looking for all kinds of things. Because I see eBay and the other online sources as the great equalizer, especially for people like us living on the fringes of the market. No, wala tayong access sa mga garage sales, sa mga estate sales sa US eh. Kaya dun ako bumabawi. Using my internet savvy to hunt these books down. And eBay is just like the big front door. As I'm sure Tony and Francis here will confirm, ang dami pang ibang sources online. Ako, there's todo colección in Spain. Ano? It's like a whole Spanish eBay. There's books, of course. Ang daming sources online na pwede mong pasukan. I even go to eBay France or eBay Ireland to look for really local material. You'd be surprised what I find on ebay.ph. Ano? Itong collegian, ebay.ph yan. I've found beautiful books, travel books. There's a whole class of books called yung Autour du Monde. Yung around the world na mga libro. Ang dami-daming illustrations niyan. Madalas may Pilipinas pa dyan. Nakukuha ko yun sa Portugal. I-ship dito. All on eBay. So without online, we will be tremendously crippled. Kaya doon na tayo bumabawi ngayon eh. Na kahit dito tayo, kaya nating talunin yung mga buyers sa Amerika. Kasi gising tayo, tulog sila eh. Kaya, importante yan sa bidding. Even the timing is important. Now, about the value of books, alam ko talagang nakakagulat yung presyo ng mga libro ngayon. But I mean, let's face it, books are like, they're a commodity like anything else, and for many young, upwardly mobile people, having a well-stocked, impressive library gives you instant cachet. I'm not saying that people who collect books are pretentious people, but it's really one good way of like educating yourself and making yourself cultured. Kahit naman lahat ito, pagsama-sama mo to, wala pang isang Rolex yan eh. Diba? Also, I must add na kaming tatlo rito, we're like amateurs here. We're not even talking about the real professionals. The best book collection, lahat ito, katiting lang ito, halimbawa sa mga collection ni Mario Freire, sina Steve Feldman, sina Jimmy Laya, and of course, si Ambet. Now, those guys are in a whole other realm of things. In fact, I often kid Ambet pagka nagkikita kami. Alam mo, Ambet, you're the scholar, I'm a scavenger. Okay? Totoo naman. Siya talagang iniintindi niya at ako talagang ang pleasure ko, yung mahanap lang yung libro at, and one of these days, I swear, papasahin ko to, iintindihin ko, kuha akong dictionary, pero syempre, it's a whole other thrill.
To add to that, sir, no, I think po, sir, yung what's also driving the prices of books right now is that a lot of the people who patronize them are the ones who are also the collectors. Alam mo naman, sir, when you're collecting either paintings or antiques or something, especially with the onslaught of the auction market, dito kasi sa Pilipinas, before there was only one auction house, Sicat-Cieto. Now you have Leon, now you have Memoria, Casa Memoria, and now you have Decada, and you have a lot of other. Before, there was only one major auction. Now they have internet auctions na, wherein in the internet auction, sometimes more than 1,000 items are up for auction on different So parang what's driving, like for example, like the discovering Philippine art in Spain, the last time it got sold for 68,000 pesos. So I think what's really driving it, sabi nga po nila, 'di ba, the auction market naman isn't really the market value of something, but it's actually the ego of 2 or 3 people fighting over what they want and saying, this is how much I'm prepared to have that. So parang, I think po, kaya siya tumataas ng ganun dahil, yun, it's also driven by that. And now, if you have we in the internet, we have a term called the pickers. So these are the guys na talaga pong nagsascavenge sa mga garage sale, ganyan. And if they know, kasi they follow the auction results. So if they know that they found, for example, a discovering Philippine art in Spain for 1,000 pesos somewhere, they won't let it go for 1,000 pesos. Most probably, they'll also put it up in auction kasi they know that the price will rise. So all of a sudden, all the types of this book, tumataas din bigla yung value. Kasi kung ikaw naman, ayoko na rin ibenta kasi baka mamaya tataas yung value. So that's the play of the prices right now on books. Kasi nga, in Salcedo, books offer a major part of the auction. Kumbaga, they're at the level of antiques, furniture, santos, and bululs and everything. So, yun po yung what I think lang about it.
Okay. In terms of sourcing the books naman, parang if you get it online, this anthropology books I got for a lot of them below $20. Yeah. So that's online outside of the Philippines. The Elephant Folio book is quite expensive. It's about $120. And Luan and Buhay is about $85. So all of these are 20 or below. So, but again, like what Francis said, when it gets to the Philippines and when it gets to the auction houses, so like this one, Philippine Folklore Stores, it sells for about 7,000 pesos online. Locally. So, when in fact, you can get it outside of the Philippines for $20 only. Yeah. But when it gets to the Philippines, prices tend to rise. So, since it's hard for some people here in the Philippines, in Metro Manila, to have their package shipped from US or from UK to the Philippines. So, that what drives the prices up high.
Magugulat ka kasi pinag-usapan namin ni Francis dito, yung huling auction ng Banagad, unang edisyon ng Banagad Sikat, umabot ng 450,000. Oo, sa Leon. Sabi ko, bakit ka? Doon pa naman kami una nagkita ni Tuning sa dekada, na unahan niya ako doon sa isang copy ng Banagad Sikat. Di naman yung first edition. Oo. Pero, these prices, again, do not indicate in any way what you might consider to be the value is what people see in it. But it works both ways then. Kasi syempre kami rin, we often buy, now and then we sell, and sometimes we sell books so we can buy more. Tulad ng isang libro talagang hinabol ko yun para mabenta. Is yung sketchbook ni Isobel. It's a very, very small book. Ang lit-lit nun. Manipis pa sa napirmado ni Isobel na kasi as a collector, you also scan all the auction results, and that's part of the trade. Papasahin mo lahat yan. Ilang auctions na yun, nagugulat ako, pumapalo lagi ng mga 200,000 itong libro ni, this one little book by Zobel, by Fernando Zobel. Inatsyempohan ko sa eBay. Bumibenta ng $250 per mato. No? Sabi ko, this is more than a paper like any book in a long time. Pero sabi ko, but I know the market value of this, so I bought it. $250, magkano yun? Mga 12.5. And then dinala ko sa Leon. 80,000. So pinabili ko rin ng mga libro. And swerte ko, the next week, minahanap na naman ako isa. Pirmado rin Isabel, to the Netzorgs. No? I got that for just $80. But now I'm keeping that in my nest egg. Okay? For a rainy day. But in other words, if you're a collector, you also need to kind of know these values, not because you're necessarily after money, but it'd be stupid to pass up on a good opportunity to make some money so you can buy more books. I thought, see, Richard Canino was going to say something.
I'm just planning to share my experience on Philippine books. So there was a time, by the way, I'm Richard Racudon, the son of the late artist Rodolfo Racudon. So I was also an anthropology graduate, but I went into Filipiniana as like my dad. There was a time in 2005, I was invited by Director David of the Rizal Library to be part of, to do an exhibit because they were having a conference on library and archives. So I told myself, well, I do not have that much rare 19th century books, but I decided to display facsimile copies of Filipiniana dust jackets. Kasi it turned out, in most libraries, number one casualty yan. Whenever a new book comes in, they will post in the bulletin board, most libraries, newly acquired books. Then they will display the dust jackets. Then they will never return them. Okay lang siguro kung mga foreign books, but Filipiniana hindi na rin. Then, prior to the exhibit, I went to Lopez, Ateneo. I just limited my research, Lopez, Ateneo, and National Library. Like in the case of Lopez, yung mga Filipiniana dust jackets sa collection nila, I think less than 10%. Then, the oldest Filipiniana dust jacket I encountered was also in the Lopez and National Library. Yung American Insular Possession, 1906. It turned, 2 volumes yon. It turned out, meron dalawang edition. The one in red copy and the one in blue copy. Then, based on my research, even yung mga local artists at that time, during the 40s, 50s, started to do renditions or design books for their friends. Like si Nick Joaquin, the one who made his book, yung Prose and Poetry in 1952, was Esmeraldo Ison, because they were both with the Philippines Free Press. Then, as of now, I have created a database of Filipiniana dust jackets. So right now, siguro ang compilation ko around 1,000 facsimile copies. Like yung kay Bulusan, I was able to buy one with the original dust jacket also, pero walang pirma niya. Then, as early as 1949, yung isang naging national artist natin designed a book. Nakita ko yung book na yun sa Ayala Museum. It was The Twain by Navarro ba yun? I think Navarro. Di ba yung si Navarro? Yeah, Elizalde Navarro. Then, Botong Francisco made some book designs like yung sa kaibigan niyang author, I cannot recall the name. Then yung ano, yung Philippine Revolution by Gonzalo. Ay, nakatipunan yata by Gonzalo. So since then, I have been sharing yung mga cover books. And I hope, sana naman, we create a program wherein we could make a permanent database for those books. Once in a while kasi may nagpo-post, oh, I was able to buy this book. Walang dust jacket. So, pinopost ko naman yung dust jacket. Sabi ko, ang ganda naman pala niya. Ayun ang bala ko. Ewan ko how we can go about in doing that database.
Thank you, Richard. So, well, that's one project to look forward to, dust jackets of Philippine books. Maybe the other FBCC members might want to share their experience. Gilbert and Tony. Gilbert? Thank you, though. Tony. And how about Sir Ben? Might want to share something?
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako po ay isang general collector collector po ako, high school pa lang po. Ngayon po 80 na. Ayun. Earlier, nabanggit po niyo po Mr. Anthony na si Amado B. Hernandez ay nabanggit niyo. Ngayon, nung buhay pa po siya po ang nag-introduce sa akin kay poet na si Pablo Neruda. Ito po ang kanyang memoir. Ngayon po, kung gusto rin kong ma-share sa iba na baka mahilig din po sa poetry and literature, bibitawan ko na po sa halagang 500. Very cheap. At so po rito ay yung biography niya, first edition po. Yung mga nag-specialize kay Charlie Chaplin. 2,000 lang po. Very cheap din. Ayun lang po. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Sir Ben.
Tony, naalala ko yung pinakita mo yung luha ng buhaya. Dadagdag ko lang, kasi may copy din ako nito, no, na actually pirmado nga ni Ka Amado. Ang nagdala sa akin, picker din. Ano? Ito mga picker na to, actually, nasabi ko madalas kay Beng, ito yung gusto kong maging trabaho talaga, yung maging picker. Ano? At pagpuno ng bodega ng puno. No? Pero yung kopya ko nung luha ng buhaya, binenta sa akin yan ng isang nagbibisikleta lang dyan sa Intermuros. Ano? Doon kami nagkita sa labas ng simbahan. Inabot niya sa akin, sabi ko magkano ito? Sabi niya, 800 po. Sige. Pirmado ni Ka Amado dun sa dalawang magkakapatid na Yuyitong, naalala niyo? Si Rizal at si Quintin. So maganda yun. Ganon din yung mimeograph edition din. Tapos sabi pa sa akin nung nagbenta, actually may isa pa akong libro po, baka gusto niyo kunin na rin eh. Pirmado naman ni Kaatang. Yung panata sa kalayaan ni Ka Amado. Sabi ko, siyempre akin na yan, magkano yan? 700. Sabi ko, sige, 1.5 sa akin yung dalawa. So minsan they literally walk up to you, these books. In fact, any collectibles, once masabi mo, tulad sa akin, nangongolekta ng mga fountain pen, oras na alam ng mga tao na nangongolekta ka niyan, sila lalapit sa'yo. Sabi nga ni Tony, mag-PM sa'yo, sabihin, sir, may bago akong nahanap dito. O mga painting, lalo na sa akin. Baka interesado kayo. And it's very important to cultivate these relationships with your sellers. Kasi minsan nga, kahit na hindi mo kailangan, kahit di gaano maganda, bilhin mo na rin. Kasi you'll never know, one of these days, may dadalhin sa iyan na talagang maganda. Importante, respetado, you respect each other. At huwag ka masyadong magpaparat. Kasi pinaghirapan din ng tao yan at alam mo namang valuable buti nga sa iyo inaalok eh. So cultivate a network of suppliers then and make them your friends because you're interested in the same things. Yes. Yung mga pickers sila pumupunta sa mga estate sales. Halimbawa, yung mga paintings na nakukuha ko, sabihin, oh sir, may ginigibang bahay dito sa may kawayan, ganyan. Although, of course, minsan, lalo na sa mga paintings, ingat ka din kasi ang daming peke dyan. Lalo na yung mga peke na mga loose, mga ganyan. Nagkalat yan. Oo, kaya, tsaka network niyan sila eh. Kung di mabenta ng isa bibenta. Nakita mo sumusulpot in different markets. But books, wala namang magpepeke siguro nito. Tulad nitong isang kinokolekta ko rin, mga lumang manuscripts, I brought old, these are letters, these are handwritten letters from the 1500s. Ito isulat kamay, pinapakita ko rin sa mga estudyante ko to. This is a letter from 1562. O so sasabihin sa akin ng mga tumitingin dito, sir, paano nyo naman nalaman na hindi peke yan? Sabi ko, sige, sumulat ka ng ganyan ng, babayaran kita ng, binayaran ko dito, 16 euros. Babayaran kita ng 16 euros, sulatin mo yan. 1562. Actually, maraming mga material tayo na nandyan lang nagkalat, na wala namang value sa ibang tao, hahanapin mo lang siya, kaya makukuha mo siya ng mura sa Europa, halimbawa. Yung aking mga third edition na Noli at Pili, nakukuha ko yan sa Espanya, hindi naman ganong kamahalan, siguro mga 50 euros, ganyan, maganda pa yung kondisyon. Kaya kailangan lang talaga matyaga ka na mag-abang at maghanap. Nandiyan lang sila.
Question. Have you seen a copy of Winds of April of NBM Gonzalez? Winds of April, yung kay NBM. Kasi I did not undertake a serious search. My work on the novel. Kasi my guess is that that book was released just a month, I think, before, and probably it never got distributed. Because I was surprised that National Library doesn't have a copy. The only copy that UP Diliman has is a photocopy of, I think, it's a signed photocopy of Franz Arciliana's. Because I think that appeared on the need of this may be another grail. So that would be a great book to find. No, kind of a first edition Winds of April.
Si Tony and Gilbert, Winds of April, first edition. Yes.
Why does he not want to share? I heard you have a particular collection that I'm interested in. I won't buy it. I'm just curious.
Accidental picker lang po ako. Mahilig lang ako sa books. That's all.
Can I describe what I think you have?
Eclectic ko yung collection mo.
No, I
Kahit
heard,
ano po.
and it intrigued me that you have a collection of the subversive literature.
Oh.
Where are they?
Full disclosure po, subversive ako nung araw. Kaya, mayroon din po ako mga collection.
How subversive? Kaya? Dating back?
Patay ang kurso ng partido. Yung mga gano'n.
So take care of them, reading them.
We have a collection of radical papers at the UP Diliman Library, and we also have a collection of archival materials on the Philippine left at the Netherlands, Institute of Social History at the Netherlands. Any other? Yeah, Chris.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm also an FBCC member. So, first of all, I would like to thank Sir Gilbert. Maganda yung mga binebenta niya. Kaya, my question to Sir Butch is, how do you actually take care the books. Kasi yung problem, I think most of the early books of Filipiniana are very acid, yung acid prone yung paper.
Yes.
So I just brought here 2 copies. This is from E.R. Senyo Mantel, his collection of yung mga mini books ni J. Martinez.
Mga J. Martinez yan. Oo.
So, ang hirap buksan. Kahit gusto ko siyang
Oo.
i-scan.
Oo.
Ang hirap siyang gusto ko na lang siyang i-donate sa Lopez
gutay-gutay na yan,
kasi instead of
Yes.
keeping it for myself. How do you take yours?
Well, totoo yung dinidescribe na problema ni Chris, para doon sa mga hindi masyadong sanay sa mga lumang libro, magugulat ka, yung mga libro na, hindi ko lang dala ngayon, pero yung mga libro kong mga 1600s, 1700s, yung iba sa kanila mukhang bago pa. At ang titibay, ang puputi. Pero pag pumasok ka na sa 1890s, early 1900s, talagang ang nipis ng papel, and they'll crumble in your hands. And of course, the basic reason for that is the change in printing technology, yung paggamit ng asido doon sa proseso na kumakain, which cheapened the printing process but also made paper more brittle over time. Kaya nag-oxidize siya ngayon. So it's coming apart. Kaya ironically, yung mga mas lumang libro, mas matibay kaysa mga 100 years ago. Ngayon, ang nangyari dyan, tulad nga nitong pinakita kong Philly na 1900, ito, mula dito, next week, dadaling ko to sa aking restorer, kasi nga, nakikita niyan, So, kailangan ma-restore itong spine niya. At ang gagawin niya actually, lalo na doon sa mga libro na, halimbawa, itong libro na, itong Philippine literature in English, nung natanggap ito, bawat pahina nito nakatanggal. Tingnan nyo, talagang punit yan. So what did my restorer do? Josie Francisco, covered everything in very thin kind of Japanese paper. Mababasa mo pa rin siya, pero actually, balot na sa papel yan. Every page has been fully restored. Yan, makikita mo. Kaya buo na siya ngayon ulit at pwede na basahin. Tingnan mo yung punit doon. Siguro, friendly, in many cases, mas mahal pa doon sa ibabayad mo sa libro. Itong dinarestore ko na itong Harper's History of the War, tell you the truth, ang bili ko rito sa libro is about 10,000, which is kind of par for the course. Binili ko to sa isang seller sa Tarlac. Ang restoration ko dito, 10,000 din, which is still relatively cheap considering ang laki-laki nitong libro, tsaka bawat pahina din yan, talagang binalik niya sa So restoration also costs, but if the book is worth it, then you have really no other choice. Ngayon yung mga J. Martinez na yan, talagang, etong si J. Martinez, ito sa mga lumang palimbaga natin, and bookseller din, kung naalala niyo mga matatanda dito, yung Grand Inihaw, oo, doon sa may welcome, noong early 70s na discover namin yan isang warehouse yan noon, na literally nag-warehouse sale, kasi sinisipa na sila doon. So pumunta kami doon, mga bata pa kami, mga book lovers lang, hindi pa naman talaga kolektor. Isang tambak na. Ito, alam mo, yung mga awit at korido, ganyan. Binibenta yun, mamiso lang yan. So ang dami naming nauwi doon, mga lumang kalendaryo from the 1930s. And of course, now all these things are falling apart. So pagka ganyan, at wala man akong pera pa, i-restore sila, the best I can do is to preserve them. And what I use these mylar sheets. Binabalot ko na lang sila nito para at least they kind of stabilized, and I put them, of course, in a cool, dry place. So yung mga pinakamahalagang libro ko, pinatago ko yun sa isang sariling cabinet talaga dun sa aking library. This is my wife, Beng, who is an art restorer. Baka may sasabihin.
But you forgot to mention yung mga earlier published books, yung mga 15th century, 16th, they were made of rag or linen from flax. Flax it has very long fiber, so that's why they are very durable. Yung mga ibang books din puti pa. Pero after mga late, yes, early 1900s and forward, ang ginagamit na doon na material is pulp, wood pulp, and that's wood pulp is very acidic, and eventually it will weaken and oxidize, and it will be very hard to handle. Katulad nung nasa, yung hawak ko yung mga Martinez, and even yung mga newsprint na ginagamit natin ngayon, wood pulp yun.
Any other questions from the group? Yes. Griselda.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Actually, I'm so nervous holding this microphone because I really don't find any relevance of myself with this particular gathering of the literati. But I think it's just providential that I'm here because I'm an avid reader of Professor Butch Dalisay's Penman column. And I chanced upon this particular article on this gathering. That's why I braved the traffic to be here. Unfortunately, my sister, who is the actual book lover aside from my father in the family, is caught in the maze of traffic at C5. But she actually has with her a catalog of our books, which my father collected practically all his reading life until his demise in 1982. If you would just permit me to make yabang about my father. My father is no other than Mauro Garcia, an avid collector, the quintessential book lover, a professorial lecturer in Filipiniana at the University of the Philippines, Institute of Library Science. But I'm a mere scientist, I would consider myself that. So that's my only relevance in this gathering. But my sister, who I have said, is just caught in the traffic. She has with her a catalog of our collections. But the original, or a big bulk of our collection was actually, unfortunately and very sadly, sold to the only Catholic university in Japan, and that is the Sophia University. Why? Because, a little story. There was a time that my father heard through Professor Armando Malay that our president was on the verge of buying libraries. My father was so afraid because it might turn out to be just libre. So sabi nga ni Professor Malay, kasi narinig ni Professor Malay, i-donate daw niya either to the National Library or to the UP UP Library ang kanyang collection. Sabi ni Professor Malay, naluloko ka ba? Ibigay mo na lang, benta mo na lang, pamana mo sa mga anak mo. But Tatay did not see the light of, all these intentions. That is why shortly, well, in 1985, I think, Nanay finally was able to speak with La Solidaridad, Mrs. Jose, and it was really, Mrs. Jose was instrumental in selling our collection to the Sophia University. I was so sad. Well, I had a chance to go to Japan, and I requested my sponsor to please take me to the Sophia University. I'd like to see my father's collection. And I was so surprised and so thankful that my father's collection was in such a special place, especially ergon, especially the right humidity for books. And I saw there Mauro Garcia collection, and even some clippings about certain book lovers' affair, my father's books, and I think my father's latest book actually is entitled Philippine Rariora, and it was published courtesy of the Lopez Foundation. Father did not see the printing of that book anymore. So, normally, the book is, the author is dedicating this book to so-and-so. But in that particular case, it was the publisher that dedicated the book to my tatay. And we were all there in a kettle ceremony at the book launching of my tatay. And the name is Philippine Rariora. But back to this collection that I'm telling you about. We still have quite a number of collections, and this is all in a catalog. My sister has the catalog with her when she comes. And I think, I hope I'm not mistaken, I think the catalog includes Blair and Robertson, among others. So I think, as I said, I couldn't let this day pass, but grab the phone, the microphone, and tell you about what we would share with this respectable group. So I think, I do not know if you have some questions, but if you have some questions relevant to the catalog, it's really my sister, who is a graduate of the UP Institute of Letters Science. So we would like to sell this because it's so sad that our books, Japanese occupation, the Philippines, etc., have all gone abroad. And it will be the Japanese and the other people will be appreciating this. But I think it should be, the Filipinos should be appreciating our own.
Ipabot niyo po sa amin yung listahan ninyo, and I'm sure dun sa aming Book Collectors Club, ay dun pa lang ay malaki na interest dyan.
Opo.
Ano? Yung binanggit po ninyo na mga katalogo ng libro, isa pa yan sa mga bagay na hinahanap din namin. Even these lists of books, especially books libraries long vanished, are important, at least for us to know what was out there once upon a time. Marami tayong mababasa din sa literatura na ito yung mga libraries ng mga kumbento noon, ng mga seminaryo, ang lalaki niyan. Ano, kaya nga lang pagkatapos ng giyera, marami rito nawala na. So even the lists themselves are important to us. And yung binanggit po rin ninyo na some of our best books are abroad, that's true. You know, I have ambivalent feelings about that, as I'm sure some of us do. On the one hand, sayang na nandun sila. On the other hand, kung wala sila doon, mabuti kung nandito sila ngayon. Tulad na lang ng Doktrina Kristiyana, no? Nakaisa-isang kopya yun sa buong mundo. Pinublish 1593, tapos pinadalagad sa Espanya. Naglaho yan ng 400 years. Nahanap yan sa Paris after the war. Binili nitong si Lessing Rosenwald at dinonate sa Library of Congress. So ngayon gagawin mo bang parang balanggiga bells yan? Sabihin mo, ay, ibalik na yung doktrina dito. And frankly, nung kinakausap ko ng mga ilang aktivista tungkol dito, sinasabi ko, alam mo, ay, para sa akin, okay lang siya na nandun kasi nahalagaan talaga siya. And accessible naman, although by special request, ano? At actually, nakapaksimili naman yan. Isa problema pa kasi dito, hindi naman sa linalait natin sarili natin, pero alam natin, ang daming nawawala dito sa National Library Archives mismo. Ninegosyo. Ano? Kaya, who's to say na pagdating yan dito, mauuwi lang yan sa isang kolektor. For several million. So these are all issues that I'm sure inflame book collectors.
Thank you, Ma'am Griselda. Yes. We have 5 more minutes left, so I think we have room for one more question, and then probably we can proceed to conversations after this session will end.
One question. There was a time during the 60s and 70s, there were two organizations or societies, the Philippine Book Lovers Society and the Philippine Bibliographical Society. What happened to those organizations? Is it possible for us to revive para may continuity? Because the Philippine Book Lovers Society even published a periodical, yung Philippine Colophon. Yun lang.
Well, there are actually several book clubs or collectors groups online. Yes, although I'm really not I don't do Facebook. Meron lang akong stealth account sa Facebook, and you know who I am there. Pero sumali ako dyan kasi nga dito sa FBCC, you get access to a lot of material. Although again, it's still basically a buy and sell place. It's not really for discussing what we buy and sell, which is refreshing in a way din. Pero yung sinasabi ni Richard na mga book lovers societies talaga noon, ibang ano yon, and we should probably revive some form of that these days. Although in this highly politicized society, nakikita ko na in 1 month, nasabog yan sa mga away-away na lang sa politika natin.
So, it's 2:30 and we have to end the session. Thank you very much for attending this session. To the national artist, Dr. Resil Mojares, thank you for attending. And it was such a very good discussion, fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.